Hi there, it's Geoff here with a look at how to structure answers to the 25 mark questions on EdExcel Paper 3. Paper 3 is a 2-hour paper for those without extra time. You get 2 data response questions, both of which are compulsory, although you do get a choice in the final essay section on both questions. It's a paper weighting 30%, the other 2 papers are 35% each, and each question has a 5, an 8, a 12 and a 25 mark section, and multiply by 2, there's 2 of those. The 25 mark essay question is synoptic, and typically it requires you to analyse and evaluate one micro and one macro point. So there are 2 25 mark questions, essentially worth half the exam or 15% of your A level, and the timing is really crucial. I think don't overwrite on the early parts of data response. Make sure, please, you give yourself 30 minutes for each of the 25 mark essay style questions. Now, in past years on the synoptic paper, these questions have been about micro and macro causes or influences, micro macro effects or impact, consequences, and also micro and macro policies or strategies. So please do prepare for each aspect. My suggested structure is a 5-paragraph answer with at least 1 diagram, but critically, please make sure you do use the context to get those application marks. So 1 micro KA paragraph followed by evaluation, 1 macro KA followed by evaluation, and then the final judgment. Now, typically the final judgment is a good chance to talk about which cause, effect or policy is most significant. Do you think a micro or macro aspect is the most significant? So for this video, and thanks for joining in, I've chosen the housing. I think it's a really good synoptic topic because you can test many micro and macro aspects. Let's just quickly read through the extracts together. You can press the pause button if you think I'm going a little bit too quickly. Just have press the pause if you want to read through the extracts at your leisure. Extract A is about the undersupply of housing, a research report from the UK Parliament in the summer of last year, saying that the housing supply shortage has been a key driver of weak performance. People are unable to access suitable housing. Many more millions of young people now living with their parents for longer. Consequences for geographical labour mobility, and also linking it to the skilled labour shortages. It's much harder for businesses to recruit the staff that people need, as well as increase homelessness. According to the National Housing Federation, we need to build over 1/3 new homes each year in England, and they reckon about 40% of them should be affordable. But despite the government's ambition of building 300,000 new homes per year, only around 230,000 homes were built in 2022. And then extract B is about housing affordability. So median earnings £33,000, but the median price of houses and flats a multiple of that. And there has in fact been a fall in home ownership between 2004 and 2021 from 71% 20 years ago to just 65% now. There are just under 5 million adults in England and Wales living with their parents. And it's not just about buying houses. Private rents have also gone up, and according to the extract here from the Economics Observatory, again autumn of 23, private rents also seriously unaffordable relative to people's earnings, and they've gone up sharply. Nice little chart here showing residential housing construction pardon me, per quarter, so you multiply by 4 to get the annual figures. There's obviously a strong seasonality, a pickup in house building, construction obviously hit by the pandemic. But we're not yet at a level we need to build 75,000 homes per quarter to reach the government's target. And the undersupply of housing, of course, is one factor on the supply side, which might explain why average house prices have done what they've done as shown in the chart here. And then some nice, interesting data. Chart 3 shows construction costs, pounds per square metre. So clearly London is a more expensive place to build. Glasgow is the cheapest. Big gap there between the costs of building townhouses and high-rise apartments. And the final chart is salaries of people working in construction. So this is the data on construction, monthly data from 29 onwards, showing quite a significant rise since 2019 in salaries in the construction sector. We're going to look in this video at 2 sort of 25 mark questions. Here's the first one. Evaluate the possible micro and macro policies that might be effective in increasing new housing supply. So the fundamental issue is that we're not building enough new homes. And the key word there in that question is effective. So you need to think about policies that might work in expanding the supply of new housing. Here's a suggested answer. Here's a sort of walkthrough if you want to have a think about how to structure a really good answer. What I like to do is make it really clear at the start of each paragraph whether it's a micro or macro point. So one micro policy that might help to increase housing supply, linking back to the question there, would be for the government to eliminate VAT applied to builders constructing new homes. VAT is an indirect tax on suppliers. Pardon me. So if VAT was taken away, it would then be cheaper for firms to convert a building into a house or flats or building new properties. Then I linked to an analysis diagram. I could have drawn the diagram first, that this would lead to an outward shift of supply and other things being the same, a fall in average prices. As a result, nice connective phrase there, this leads to a new equilibrium with a higher quantity of new homes bought and sold, and therefore help the government reach the target mentioned in extract A. So some nice connectives, some nice flagging. Alternative micro policy. When I went through this question with my students, they all said, well, talk about subsidies for building firms. That would be a perfectly valid micro policy. Here's the analysis diagram. Contextualise the axes. If we take away VAT, in theory that leads to an increased supply of new homes, which in theory leads to a fall in prices and an increase in the quantity bought and sold. However, evaluation, there might be limits to the effectiveness. Of course, effectiveness is in the question, so bring it into the evaluation. Building materials are perhaps only a small percentage of the total cost of building a new house, such as the nearly £4,000 per square metre for a townhouse in London. Other costs, such as wages, might have gone up, and indeed Chart 4 shows that weekly wages in construction have increased by over £100 over the last 3 years. Nice bit of application there. And many building firms have been hit by the rising cost of land and also, of course, increased energy costs in the last few years. So this will reduce profits even if VAT is cut. Good evaluation there, challenging the effectiveness of a VAT cut, and in particular there's 2 bits of application in the paragraph. Then you switch to macro. So synoptic paper, 1 micro point, evaluate it, then macro. And again, I'm flagging very clearly. You can see what I'm doing here at the start. 1 macro economic policy would be to increase the number of work visas for people to work in the UK. A little mention of Brexit there. Brexit has ended free movement of labour for the UK within the single market. As a result, many building firms have experienced shortages of skilled labour, such as bricklayers, roofers, carpenters, plasterers. This is a factor driving up wage costs and causing delays, which then holds back new housing construction. So relaxation of migration controls might help, because it takes several years for extra investment in things like apprenticeship schemes in construction to take full effect. So my macro policy here is to increase the number of work visas. Pardon me. And my student said, well, what about cutting corporation tax for building businesses? All fine, all good. That will be an alternative macro policy. You only have to think about 1 micro policy, 1 macro policy in a 25 marker. You only need 2 KAA paragraphs, not 3. My evaluation: even when there's a plentiful supply of skilled labour helped by rising migration, other factors can delay new house building, including lengthy and costly planning applications, a bit of NIMBYism when large new housing developments affect local communities. And some people claim that construction companies are actually quite happy to sit on land. They have land banks. They buy the land but don't build their houses. And they see the value of land rise if expected profits are not high enough. Now, then you come to the final reason judgment. I go back to the extract. There's an undersupply of about 100,000 homes each year. Extract 2 says there's been a fall in home ownership. I like this phrase: no one policy on its own is likely to be enough to correct this. In the long run, I would argue that at a macro level, there needs to be more investment in government spending to fund council and social housing. So, for example, allowing local authorities to borrow money to finance an expansion of building. Government investment might then have a positive multiplier effect, which in turn could generate tax revenues from council tax to help cover the cost of projects. See, that's really a second macro policy built into the evaluation. I think my argument is that no one policy on its own is enough. I think fundamentally Local authorities need to be able to borrow money to build new homes, or the government could build them. Okay, so that was a little look at the policies. An alternative question. I'm not going to walk through this one, but I just want to give you a little flag up. Here will be the same extracts, the same data, the same context. How about this question? So sometimes you can throw the curveball and ask a slightly different question with the same information. Evaluate the possible micro and macro effects of a large rise in new house building. Again, if you want to press the pause button on the video, have a think about how you'd answer this particular question. At a micro level, anything to do with price and output, so demand and supply of houses will be fine. You could talk about the profits of construction companies and of suppliers, estate agents, construction materials, etc. You might want to talk about the micro effects on economic welfare, consumer and producer surplus. Many students would choose externalities as their micro point. Obviously, new house building has mixed externalities. There can be some externalities from construction, but also positive externalities from more affordable houses. And you could use the labour market as your micro point, supply and demand for labour if we're building lots of new homes. And at a macro level, think of the diagram opportunities there, particularly externalities in labour markets. And at a macro level, well, you aggregate, don't you? So you think about the consequences for unemployment, possible consequences for short-term and long-term growth, what might be the impact on the trade balance, particularly if we're importing construction materials, possible effects on fiscal policy, and also generally, I suppose this is micro as well as macro, inequality, the extent to which new house building could help to bring down relative poverty going forward. Again, think of the diagram opportunities for your macroeconomics point. There we go. Thanks for joining in this video on preparing for EdExcel Paper 3 Synoptic. We chose housing as our topic, and I really hope you found the video useful. If you did, please consider pressing the like button, subscribing to the channel. Loads more exam support in the weeks and months to come. Stay happy, stay healthy, stay positive, stay curious, and I hope to see you sometime soon.